Welcome back, everybody, to the fourth round of Swiss at the biggest UK store championships. The top two players get a full case of the first chapter, and I've got myself a Ruby Amethyst mirror up against Matt Brown, and I'm going second. Matt Brown, a former Magic player, very well known in that community, and is also just coming off the back of a top 128 finish at Disney Lorcana Challenge Bochum, which got them a Let It Go promo. And they were playing Ruby Amethyst in that tournament as well. So I'm really up against it here, being very new to Ruby Amethyst. This is a real test. The first three games, as you would have seen in the first video, were pretty smooth. But this is where the competition really starts to heat up. Some of the best players in the UK at this event. And from here on out, every game is going to be really very tricky. The good news for me, despite going second, is I've also found my turn one Chernobog. I decided to ink Flynn. I am only playing two Flynn Rider frenemies, so it's definitely a big decision to go for that. And at this moment, I just realized I don't have my phone as lore counter, and I had special permission from the judges here. You'll also notice the guy in the background with the England top. This tournament was filmed the same day as the Euros finals, which, as I'm sure many of you know, didn't end too well for England, but never mind. So I'm just getting the lore counter ready. Of course, Matt had quested for one here and bounced it back with the snake, and then we're ready to go. And as you can see, Matt's writing stuff down with paper as well. Now, looking at my hand, I've got lots of brooms, lots of Chernobogs. I've got a Sisu. So I think there's also an option of going for a snake here. And I've got my first kind of decision. Do I want to go for the snake, or do I want to be a bit more greedy and quest with the Chernobogs, try and find another one drop, and then go for double one drop? Now, I'm already questioning, was inking Flynn the correct decision? Well, Flynn wouldn't, in fairness, be getting me any value here. It would be a very easy brawl target. My opponent inked a brawl, but has another brawl available. And of course, with them going first, their Sisu is going to be considerably bigger than mine. So even though at this moment in time, it does seem like a bit of a weird decision to ink the Flynn, I do think it's correct. I just have a decision to make at this moment. I've quested with the Chernobog. I can still draw with it, of course, because I've not done anything else since. So I could banish and draw and try and high roll myself like a nice top deck. And I do go for this, which is controversial, but I get absolutely rewarded with the top deck of Broom. I don't know if this was really a good life choice. I think I didn't want to ink the Brooms and the other cards available in my hand. But now I do ink the Snake, and I go for the Broom. And I definitely got away with quite a lot there to find the Broom off the top, because if I didn't find the Broom, I'm only playing one Broom on this turn instead of a Snake, and that doesn't seem like the wisest of decisions, really. So I'm not sure that was the best start for me, but it worked out. It was the best start, but I basically got rewarded for making a very greedy play, which I don't think I would have made on reflection, having watched it back. As I say, this is me learning Ruby Amethyst a lot on the job, and it was definitely a very good learning experience. I think the longer the tournament went on, the better my kind of decisions were. But I have to say as well, Crab on 3, very slow. I'm not a fan of Crab in this deck. I think Matt said that this is a new addition to their deck. Of course, it's going to help you against castles and mirrors. It's going to help you against things like Robin Hood. But my personal opinion is Ruby Amethyst in this current metagame wants to be pretty quick, and playing cards like Crab and Maleficent on turn 3, which don't quest for much, personally is not for me. I think the deck just wants to have a bit more questing power. But of course, I can see the logic of Crab. 1 or 2 copies. It can sing friends as well, of course. Really nice option with the Fox to remove a castle. And mirrors are very prevalent at the moment. So I ink Sisu. At the moment, I've only quested with 1 Broom. And I changed my mind, because I now quest with the Broom as I was expecting I would do. And then I think on 3, you're going to see my Fox come through. I bounce back 1 Broom. The other one's going to draw. And I don't decide to make the trade. Of course, Matt is the aggressor in this situation, in theory, even though I'm slightly ahead for now, as they sing friends. So there's definitely an argument to trade with my Fox for Snake. With the rush ability, I'm not losing 1 lore to do it, but what I am losing is I'm losing a 3-cost character which can sing friends, which is why I decided not to go for it. But even though I'm slightly ahead in lore for now, it's very, very likely that Matt is going to be the aggressor just because they developed the board first. So you can see we're now all even. I could have denied this 1 lore from the Snake with just a rush from my Fox, but I wanted to sing friends with my Fox. Definitely an interesting decision. I think looking back, it might have been a bit more wise to just take the trade. But you can see why I have decided to not take the trade in this case. But with the fact it was a Fox rush, I wasn't actually losing any lore instantly that turn, right? A lot of the time when you take a trade, you're losing the ability to quest for one to take the trade, whereas with the rush ability, I wasn't. But of course, then I was losing the ability to sing this turn. But Sisu comes through, in comes a rabbit. Of course, Ruby Amethyst Mirror is very much a battle for card draw, but also the player going first can really run away with it. Especially with Flynn Rider on turn 2, they can go pretty crazy. That wasn't something that Matt had as Brawl gets inked. They're now at 5, and in comes Maui. And this is kind of another, I mean, looking back, it was probably a better decision, I think, to just take that trade with the snake a couple turns back, right? Now this Maui had a very clean trade. Of course, I don't have a very easy way of dealing with that. And Matt is very much being the aggressor. So I think I go back to that turn 3 play. And I think Fox trading was probably a better idea. Okay, it's great to sing friends, but I'm not really in a rush to sing friends. But I used Peter Pan to trade out Maui. So Maui traded for 2 of my 3 cost characters, which is pretty strong. But at least I have now removed the Maui, of course. That is nice. So Peter Pan, not a card I'm thrilled about in this particular matchup. But using its rush ability was half decent there. I do go for singing Beaking Undisputed. And actually, after I made this play, I was wondering if I should have just gone for singing Beaking first. I doubt they ever would have selected Maui, but they might have. And then that could have just made me make some different plays. Like, initially I was like, I want them to remove Maui so I get something else. I think I should have just gone for the Beaking initially and then the Peter Pan. Because I don't think they're ever selecting Maui. If they are, I'm happy and I can make a different play. Snake comes through on the rabbit. But Matt is, of course, ahead by 3 lore at this stage with slightly more board presence. Question for 2 again. Very aggressive start from Matt with 8. Of course, good news for me is there's no Flynn, no goats just yet, but you have to be very, very careful against Ruby Amethyst not to let them get so much lore in the early game. Maleficent comes through, which I'm pretty happy to see. I really think this card is pants. I'm such a hater of Maleficent Sorceress. You will never catch me playing this card in Ruby Amethyst, that's for sure. Everyone does. There's nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong. It's a great card. It's just, for me, it's just not for me. It's got 2 lower stats. It doesn't quest for much. Okay, it sings friends. Okay, it's guaranteed card draw. But a broom's guaranteed card draw if you really want as well, right? And a broom is cheap. You can play it on turn 1. So I go for my own Maui, removing the crab. I've got the snake ready and waiting as well, because that has been down for a turn at this point. I also do have 1 ink still available to put into the inkwell, and I have a broom in hand as well. So Flynn Rider goes, which honestly is a bit controversial again. Like, Flynn Rider's putting in some work potentially. That's both of my 2 Flynn Rider frenemies into the inkwell. But that also shows you if I'm inking the Flynns this willy-nilly and I only play 2 of them, 4 copies of Flynn Rider frenemy seems like a lot to me. I think 3 or 2 is a more reasonable number. Probably 3 is a sweet spot. I was only on 2 this tournament. I can't say I regret that decision too much. But honestly, next time I play Ruby Amethyst, I really do want to experiment with playing more more 1 cost cards. They just feel very nice in this deck. Maui comes through, removing the snake. The questing kind of power has slowed down at this point. I've stabilized the board reasonably well. But obviously Matt is now with the Fox and the Maui really starting to have the board control. But I'm not too far away from getting up to be prepared range, so that's something I need to consider. But then I also need to consider that Matt might be going for a Queen's Castle to mitigate the potential power of a be prepared. So I go for the rabbit. I draw, and then I have the option, of course, of banishing the broom. I now actually find the be prepared, so I know that's something I can gear up towards. The other thing I wanted to do by getting this rabbit down on the board is developing the potential to sing Beaking Undisputed for some control. And I think, still have the potential to ink this turn. So I ink go, regrettably, which allows me to hardcast friends. So potentially there was a missequencing here where I should have just hardcast friends first and then played the rabbit or something like this, because it might have given me some more optimal inking options. But it's now Matt's turn. They're at 9 lore. I'm at 5. Medusa onto rabbit. Now this is pretty clear for me at this point that I'm going to be going be prepared this turn. I wonder if Matt had the option of going Queen's Castle. I can't quite see the hand at the moment. I'm going to definitely work on these camera placements and whatnot moving forwards, because I think doesn't look like this castle. There's a couple rabbits in there. There's a be prepared for Matt, I think. But I do go for the be prep. Very easy choice. Of course, I found it the previous turn. And play passes on over to Matt. Well, I'm allowed to ink this turn as well, but no 1-drop to follow that up as well. Unfortunately, this time, this is another reason I just love the one drops like the brooms and the Chernobyls. Dump it down. Imagine Matt goes castle here. Then I've got like just even that 1 point on the board, which they did. Imagine I just had like 1 strength from the board here and a Maui, right? Suddenly that Queen's Castle is getting removed this turn. So something like a broom or a Chernobog would be actually saving me 2 lore, which would be tremendous. So the more I play Ruby Amethyst, the more I watch it, the more convinced I am I want to try and add in some extra copies of 1-cost characters. It's not going to be easy to fit more, but in comes Maui. I need to be careful of Beking Undisputed. Of course, this Sisu can also trade out my Maui if they so desire. But look at that. Pan Shadow Finder does the business. This is something I saw the player that won Bochum utilize very well. The rush of the Pan Shadow Finder being very relevant to answer Queen's Castle. It was kind of the deciding factor on why I decided to go for it over Tremaine, because it does give you that extra bit of ability in the mirror matchups, even though Tremaine's very good. Overall, I wasn't super impressed by Pan Shadow Finder. This was one of the best moments for the card during the weekend. But you can certainly see it's more than just a card to deal with Diablo. Sisu Quests, putting Matt up to 12 lore. And of course, the Peter Pan is evasive, so cannot be challenged by the Madam Mim. I've got Beking Undisputed, which I can sing with Maui. I think I very embarrassingly asked Matt for a rules. What am I trying to say here? Ask Matt for like a rules explanation, because I'm like, can I sing with Maui when it's got the ability to challenge, which I was pretty convinced I could, but I did want some confirmation. I was like, I'm a bit embarrassed, mate, but can I just double check I'm allowed to do this? I don't play Ruby Amethyst very often at all. So, always worth checking. I was pretty convinced I could, but I didn't want to get in trouble with the judge. This is where I'm asking him about. It's like, yeah, you can. Oh, he's like, who am I playing against? What kind of a donut am I playing against? Yeah, I'm like a little bit embarrassed. There you go. So checking the amount of cards I have in hand because of the Sisu. Obviously, it's very, very strong right now. I would need to get down to 2 cards in hand for my Maui to remove it and stay on the board. So that's not going to happen. Of course, Brawl can't target Sisu or the Fox either. So I quest with the Peter Pan. But I really do want to I need to remove as much questing power from Matt's side of the board as possible. Because getting, obviously at 12, the threat of rabbits is very serious. So I go ahead and sing Beking Undisputed with Maui. They get rid of the Fox. Probably because it only quests for 1, whereas Sisu quests for 2. But then there's another! See you later, Sisu. My 4 copies of Beking Undisputed really paying off. I am still interested in Tremaine in this deck as well. Peter Pan was what I went for instead of Tremaine. But with so many copies of Beking, as I mentioned in the previous video, you're kind of getting more value off Tremaine as well, right? Because you're just able to keep using these cards to clear and clear and clear. If they have 2 characters and there's one you really want to get, you can sing Beking and play Tremaine in the same turn to get both of them. Rabbit and Sisu, pretty nice response from Matt. I'm still only at 6 lore, unfortunately very far behind, but I have some Medusas available to deal with the Rabbit. The other thing I have to consider here is not playing into Be Prepared too heavily as well. But I don't have a Queen's Castle, for example, so that's not going to be an option. Quest for 1 with the Rabbit. I decided to quest with the Rabbit because I know I'm always doing that. Whereas the Peter Pan, I might want to sing Friends, and the Maui, I might want to sing Be King. But yeah, I wanted to draw first, so I quest with the Rabbit and then bounce it back. And I leave the Pan and the Maui ready in case I want to be able to sing something with them that I draw. Whereas the Rabbit, I knew I wanted to bounce back to see if I had any better options available to me. And here we go, a bunch of lore ink exerted for the Medusa. I hit the Rabbit, can't hit the Sisu, of course. And it is at this moment I can quest with the Peter Pan. Of course, the Snake and Medusa came down this turn, so they're not able to quest. But the Sisu's a problem, getting Matt up to 14. I have stabilized the board, but there's also very much the possibility that Matt quests with Sisu here and just plays Be Prepared. And I don't have a Queen's Castle, I think, in my hand to kind of respond to such a play either. So quest with Sisu up to 14. And there's the B prep, which I did play pretty heavily into. I'm not really sure there was much else I could have done in fairness. I didn't have Queen's Castle available. And I still don't have Queen's Castle available, which is a calamity. This is kind of the perfect time to play a castle. Rabbit comes through. Still no sign of the castle. So now it's also a balancing act. Like, do I want to keep committing into B prep? And I don't. I go for Friends. I'm looking back. I don't think so, mate. I think I just had to play further into B prep and accept that I'm in a bit of a sticky situation. I can't even quite tell if Matt does have Be Prepared available right now. I don't believe that they do. But this just feels like a little bit of a wet noodle to just go Rabbit and Chernobogs. It's not really giving me enough oomph. I need a little bit more questing power. When Matt's at 14, I need to get this game over with pretty quickly. Admittedly, a Maui wouldn't have done much else either, but just hard casting friends is a little bit desperate, really. Medusa does remove Rabbit. Maybe it was fine to go friends, but it's certainly not ideal, is it? So I'm at 8. Matt's at 14. Medusa and Maleficent only questing for 2, but that gets them to 16, and that's very much within GOAT range. So there is the option of going Be Prepared. And this is kind of the problem with my slower start, that even a board that's not that threatening from Matt like this is something I'm considering Be Preparing. And I think we go back to that Madam Mim decision on turn 3, not to trade. I think it was a mistake. I think just get rid of that snake. Matt was going first. Respect the questing threat was probably more wise. And that's just something I'm learning. Even just watching this back, I'm learning. This is my first big test in a Ruby Amethyst mirror. Up against it going second, that's for sure. The player going first in these Ruby Amethyst mirrors can definitely run away with it in the early game with Flynn Rider in particular, which Matt didn't have in this case. But Maui gets inked, and I go for the Medusa onto Maleficent. I don't draw with the Chernobogs, which I think is a good decision, because I want as much questing power as possible at this stage. I'm not worried about Matt trading into my Chernobogs particularly, because that means they wouldn't be questing. Of course, it could be a Maui or something like that, but it kind of is what it is, right? So Rabbit comes through, Goat comes through up to 15, Medusa quest, and now 16, just 4 away with a Goat on the board. But it's back on over to me. And again, at some point, I'm just going to have to clear the board. I kind of delayed the Be Prepared in the previous turn. I'm not really sure I can afford to do so again, but I don't feel good about the Be Prep. I do get to draw with my Chernobogs. I do have that Broom ready to go as well, but still no sign of the Queen's Castle, regrettably. So Be Prep comes through. Matt's going to get 1 for Rabbit, 1 for Goat, and there is a bit of an issue here because Matt writes it down, but my law counter, which is my responsibility, by the way, I did not update. So Matt is actually at 17 here, but I did not realize that. That's just me being a bit of a donut. And I think, again, I've learned from this that I should probably, while I'm recording and using a law counter of my own, I should make sure that I'm also probably writing it down on paper. I don't know. I think this was just me being a bit of a donut. There was a lot going on with the B prep. But yeah, Matt's at 17 here, but to mine, I'm playing as if they're on 16, which isn't ideal. And that is my responsibility. Matt's got it all written down. Double castle, that's what you're looking for after a Be Prepared. My goodness. So Matt's at 17. But I think they're at 16. Doesn't really change anything. I know that at least one of these castles has to go. And I'm also a little bit worried about time at this point because this is game 1. And I think it was like 55 minute rounds. I'm not sure, but I haven't ever had a game which goes to time. But I've never played Ruby Amethyst before. I'm more of an aggro gamer usually. The good news for me is I do have a very clean answer to this castle with the Fox and the Goat combining to remove one of them. And of course I get quite a lot of lore with the Goat entering play and leaving play again. So I'm up to 15. And I do have 1 ink still available, I believe, or possibly even more with that Broom coming down. I do love these brooms. You will never catch me playing Maleficent. Another Broom. I'm feeling pretty good. I like my chances. I can't remove the second castle, but they need a Goat and a bounce to my knowledge. But actually, the reality is that they only need the Goat because they were actually at 19 after this. That 1 ink I missed from the Goat with the Be Prepared. Matt had it written down. I trusted him. And obviously I could have just watched back the recording to see that I was a donut anyway. And we go into game 2. It didn't make a difference, but just a lesson learned from my perspective. Matt's going to mulligan 2 cards. I'm going free. Matt, I'm going first in this one. So I've got a couple of castles. I've got, which I'm not interested in keeping against like things like Maui and Fox. I also saw he has a crab. But I am interested in keeping the Friends. I'm interested in keeping the Sisu. I think also Friends and the Broom and also turn 2 Snake. I draw the Peter Pan, which is a bit of a stinker. I ink Maui, which is also a bit controversial. Maui very good in this matchup. Flynn Rider gets inked when going second. That makes sense. And it's a Chernobogs versus a Broom. So the Peter Pan this early on is a bit of an awkward one. I do find one of my two frenemies. This is the time in the game I definitely am interested in it. I quest for 1 with my broom. And I have a decision here on if I want to play the snake or if I want to play the Flynn. And I make the decision to ink snake to play the Flynn. And I now have a decision on if I draw with the broom, and I decide that I do not want to. And the reason for that is, if Matt wants to remove this broom, they're going to have to challenge with their Chernobogs, which also denies them a card draw and 1 lore. And I can just gain more lore with my broom. Now in comes the snake. A lot of people would draw a broom here, and I think brooms and Chernobogs are very high skill ceiling cards. You want to keep them on the board as long as you possibly can without them being removed. That's the ideal situation. So it's a bit of a fight for Flynn Rider value now. The broom on the board also does enable a potential fox on 3 to bounce back the broom and have the higher strength character. But as I'm going first and I have Sisu available, I go for the Sisu instead because this Flynn Rider is now a big threat. And I do now draw with the broom because, of course, Madam Mim could trade it very easy. I do force the brawl onto my Flynn. And Matt doesn't quest with the Mim, which I find interesting. Of course, I have the option of trading it pretty efficiently with Sisu. But equally, that would stop me questing. So I don't know if I agree with Matt's decision not to quest with the Mim here, because it just gives me a free decision to quest with the Sisu. But the other thing is they might want me to be questing with the Sisu, right? As now they could potentially rush in with a fox and remove the Sisu quite comfortably. But in comes a rabbit. And again, the decision not to quest with the snake. At this point, I can see it more because of the threat of something like a Maui. But in my opinion, this snake should have quested already. I would have quested. Let me know if you agree. I think that I would just quest because Matt's just like not giving me a decision to make, right? They're just letting me quest with Sisu. Note as well, I sing Friends with Rabbit, not Sisu. I could have, the previous turn, I think, sang Friends with Sisu, but Sisu quest for 2, Rabbit for 1. So I was in no rush to get that Friends sung when I can just sing it with a character which quest for 1 instead of a character which quest for 2 a turn later. Very, very important decision. As you can see, I'm kind of running away with it. Matt does still have that snake on the board though, which is going to be nice down the line for board control. I go for the brawl onto the rabbit. This is probably just to try and deny the ability for Matt to bounce that back multiple times. Not exactly the quickest play, but I didn't like many of my other options anyway. I ink my other brawl, and I spend 2 for a snake onto the rabbit to get some more card draw. Obviously, that rabbit could have been removed by their snake. And again, we're just in this position where my Sisu and Matt Snake are chilling on the board. My Sisu's questing and the snake's doing nothing. Speaking of doing nothing, look at how weak this Maleficent is. It's so bad. I hate this card so much. I think Matt might have top decked the Maui, otherwise they would have played Maui this turn. But it's just looking very, very good. I'm just not threatened at all by Maleficent coming down at this stage. Maleficent's got nothing on Magic Broom. I'm such a Maleficent hater, it's unbelievable. I quest with Sisu. Of course, singing Friends was an option here that a lot of people would have gone for. But as I've mentioned 7 times, Sisu quest for 2. I want to sing Friends with something which quest for 1, like a snake, like a fox or a goat or a rabbit or a Maui, which quest for nothing, of course. And I'm just getting as much questing power as I can. In comes the Chernobogs. Look, I've got 1 ink spare. What do? I play another 1 cost character, which is just what I want to be doing. And Sisu goes into the inkwell. So I actually had 2 ink spare in this case. Matt's going to draw. The Sisu is still chilling on the board. The snake's still not done a single thing, but the Maleficent gets to sing Friends, which, while that's nice, it's not helping Matt claim the board back at all. The snake finally comes into action and trades my snake. My snake, of course, got to quest for 1, whereas Matt's did not. And Matt's hit the board many turns earlier. The Medusa comes through and removes the rabbit, which I get to draw from, of course. But it's a pretty healthy lead. Sisu's still chilling on the board, still questing for 2 a turn. I've got an abundance of cards available after the rabbits bouncing back and singing Friends. I'm looking like I'm in a very, very comfortable position. Much more comfortable than Matt was in game 1 as the player going first. Just utilising that card advantage. Not card advantage, but that advantage by going first to just try and develop the board and quest as much as possible. Sisu's going to continue to quest. The Chernobog's going to quest. Do I draw with it? I do. Draw before I make any other decisions. And again, I still have Friends available to sing with Sisu, but why would I? I can quest for 2. So I'm going to spend 3, I think, on the pan here to rush in and remove Maleficent. Maleficent's so bad. It is just terrible. I don't know why anyone plays that card. And that's not a disrespect to Matt. Everyone plays that card, including the tournament winners in Bochum. I just think it's so bad. If I could say the most overrated card in Disney Lorcana, I would say Maleficent free drop, and I would say it's not close. It's obviously good, but yeah, you'll never catch me playing it, that's for sure. Funnily enough, ironically, the card that Lorcana gave me to reveal is like the Emerald version of Maleficent. I ink Friends because I decided at this point I have an abundance of cards available. Always a risk to ink Friends, but I decided I've got enough cards available and I wanted to get that magic broom down because I just have that 1 ink spare. I think it's pretty reasonable. Matt is not able to B-prep me just yet either, seemingly. Friends is getting inked by Matt as well, deciding that they also have enough cards. They quest for 1. And it's back on over to me. And I'm just getting very, very close to that 20 mark. Peter Pan with that 1 damage. Could have been singing Friends, so definitely wasn't an easy decision to ink Friends, but I just want to keep all the cards which are questing. I have another Pan's Shadow in hand as well. And that is why I don't love the card, because it is uninkable. It's just a bit clunky. I would love to be inking Pan's Shadow much more than I'm able to. And it's forcing me to ink cards like Friends, which I really would rather not ink. Quest of Everything. And then, of course, with the Broom, I have a decision to make on if I want to draw with that. I'm kind of fearing Be Prepared at this stage, so I'm pretty interested in doing so. I go for Sisu, and I draw. I now have Queen's Castle available, and the problem with going Queen's Castle here is they can challenge with the Medusa, the Snake, and then they can go for the B Prep. So I just go for a B King instead. And I kind of wait with this Queen's Castle, where if Matt does want to B Prep me, then I can just dump the castle after that fact, right? If I'd gone castle here, Medusa instead of questing for 1, challenges with the Snake, removes the castle, and then the B Prep comes through. So it only would have really saved me 1 law. Whereas the B King also saved me 1 law. Hello, castle. Have I got another one? Can I do the same thing to Matt? You bet I can. Double castle. Hello. And this was a very dominant performance. Obviously, very similar game to game 1, but in reverse. But have to say that I got significantly closer than Matt did to staying in that one. I think I got up to 15. Matt was able to cross the line with the GOAT, whereas I think I was probably a turn or 2 away from winning in my one. So I think the Brooms made such a big difference of just early questing power, not singing with Sisu. I think Matt's decision maybe not to do anything with the Snake, while not a huge deal, seemed a bit off to me. GOAT gets me to 20, but this is the big one. Game 3, Matt goes first again, of course. And this is the big one. It's a 6 rounds of Swiss in this event, and this is the 4th round. So if I win, I'm 4-0. If I lose, I'm 3-1 with still 2 rounds to go. And I'm probably going to need to win both of my last rounds if I lose this one to make it. So it's a really, really big game. If I win this, in theory, there's a very good chance I could just ID my last 2 rounds and I'll take it, which is not something I'm interested in doing anyway. But certainly it means I'm very, very close. I think it's possible that if I win this game and then lose my last 2, that I can still sneak into the top cut on win percentage or opponent win percentage or whatever. So it's a huge game, that's for sure. And I know there's a lot of very, very strong players who have already lost the game, because there was a lot of very top players that queued into each other in the early rounds. Queen's Castle gets inked. In comes Chernobog's. Great start for Matt being the aggressor. But the good news is, if my 8-1 drops, I'm going to consistently find my turn 1. And the other thing about having a turn 1 with Ruby Amethyst, which I think is so important, is it just enables your Snake on 2 play to be more of an option. I'm not playing many Flynn Riders, so if I miss a turn 1 here, I'm also missing turn 2. So finding this Chernobog was absolutely huge. And again, I think next time I play it, I'm going to try 10, maybe even 11 1 drops in my deck. Chernobog's going to quest, and Matt, similar to me in the previous game, doesn't quest. But I've now got an interesting consideration on, do I actually want to remove this Chernobogs? Is that something I'm interested in doing? And the answer is, maybe if I had a turn 2 play that wasn't relying on bouncing back the Chernobogs into my hand, right? Which is the Snake. I think I would have considered taking it otherwise, so I go for my Snake, which is a pretty nice play to get some board presence. Matt, of course, nothing on turn 2 is great news for me. Flynn Rider would have been quite spooky to deal with. The Chernobog's quest for 1 and banishes to draw. And Matt's going to ink a castle. Obviously, Maui, big threat in this matchup, and comes in with a crab. Not a great turn 3 either, I have to say. Not a great turn 3, but the crab is a threat. Being able to be bounced back with a fox to remove a castle in a single swoop can sing friends. But it's not great, is it? Speaking of not great, my turn 3. I don't have a whole bunch of much, do I? I can go for a fox onto my own snake. I could just play a Chernobog's and do not much else. I ink Brawl, and I do go for the fox. This just gives me something to sing friends with, but I also don't like my opener. You can see I'm not too happy about that. Matt gets to sing friends to draw 2. I have to say the crab was better than the fox play, that's for sure. Although, at least the fox adds a card back into my hand. And the snake's going to be good for a rainy day. Rabbit comes through. Matt not interested in going for that Queen's Castle with the threat of fox. And things like Maui as well in the not too distant future. So here I've got the option of trading the crab, but I decided to sing friends. It was kind of my decision in the previous turn to go for the fox over just something like a Chernobog's. So I could sing friends. Give myself some more options. And I'm pretty interested in trying to get a 4-cost character down to seeing Bee King and start getting some board presence. I find Maui off the rabbit and play passes back on over to Matt, who can go up to 5. A slower start for Matt here, which is great news for me. As the player going second, they're not running away with it as much as they were in the previous games. The fox is going to come through, bouncing back the rabbit. Matt can, of course, rush in with the fox here to trade foxes, but could also just leave it where it is. Decides to do so. Obviously can't quest or sing with the fox this turn because of its rush ability, though it can challenge. So I think it makes sense to make that trade. And Maleficent goes into the Inkwell where it belongs, although maybe you could argue Maleficent doesn't belong in the deck in the first place. That's what I would argue. I draw Pan, which I'm not thrilled about, I think. Again, every time I see this card, I'm pretty unhappy. Unless I'm up against a Diablo. Just being uninkable, it forces me to ink a card I would really rather not ink. Like, you're not going to ink a Medusa and feel, you don't feel bad about holding onto Medusa in your hand, but you do feel a bit bad about a 3-cost uninkable with Rush. That's not really doing much outside of a specific matchup. But there we go. Chernobog and Crab on Matt's side of the board. So, of course, Bee King Undisputed would give them the choice of removing one. And honestly, they're both pretty good to remove. The Crab is a body which can sing friends, but the Chernobog is 1 card in hand as well for Matt. So I'm pretty interested in trying to remove one, if not both of these. And so I have the option of singing Bee King, but instead I decide to just quest for 1, which is interesting. Save the Bee King for a rainy day, I suppose. And snake down on the board. Also, if I can get the early lead in lore, I can maybe force Matt to be making some dodgy quests. Some dodgy challenges, rather, when they'd rather quest. So definitely an interesting decision not to go for the Bee King. I've got 2 ink remaining, but I haven't inked yet this turn. I'm not sure there's much that's really looking too clean. I ink Snake. It's not looking great, but I have a Pan for 3. Sure, it's uninkable. It's got to come down at some point. It's going to be a card which can quest as an evasive. It can sing friends as an evasive. I've got to play it at some point since it's uninkable, so I suppose it makes sense, but you can see why I'm not thrilled about the card in general. I did like it. But yeah. Matt's going to draw with the Chernobog's. Again, this Maleficent, this crab, it's just so slow. I just would not want these cards. Similar to how I don't like the Pan Shadow in my deck. I just think like the crab and the Maleficent, they're just too slow for my taste. The Pan Shadow is there very specifically to deal with Diablo, right? And improve my matchup there, which is one of the most common matchups. And I'm like, okay, the Maleficent is also good in that matchup, and so is the crab, but yeah, I don't know, mate. I don't think so. Not for me, anyway. In comes the rabbit. I get to draw, of course. Matt is the aggressor, potentially, having gone first, so I might want to consider trading my snake for the crab. And I think that's what I'm deciding at this point. Do I want to quest? Do I want to trade? I quest with the Pan first, and I like this decision because I know I'm always doing that, and this kind of just gives me more time to think about what I want to do with the snake. I can just see the board state a little bit more clearly. I know I'm always questing with the Pan here. There's nothing else to do. So though I go for that first, and then I take the trade, just to give myself a little bit more time to think about while making sure I do all the obvious things first. Doesn't actually make a difference. It's just kind of a good practice thing, something that I recommend trying to do. And this is an interesting turn because I now have 2 ink spare. And look at that. The Broom and the Churnabogs, my favorite cards. So I played pretty heavily into a B prep here. But the thing is that Matt would also be B prepping 2 decent cards of their own, right? And they go for a rabbit. I think Be Prepared is an option. I'm trying to really peek the hand. Be Prepared was an option. And I wonder if it was ever a better decision for Matt to quest and actually take the B prep there. It denies me double card draw. It denies me a lot of lore. Honestly, I think I would have taken the B prep if I was Matt there. Matt goes for the Fox. And I'm not sure if that's correct either, by the way, because Matt's played a lot more of these mirrors than I have. But I think the Be Prepared was a very interesting option there for Matt. And I'm quite happy to see that it doesn't come through, to be fair. Now I'm in a position where I have my own B prep, but I can potentially try and draw with the Churnabogs and the Rabbit if I want to before the B prep comes through. Oh, put that belly away, son. Nobody wants to see that. So yeah, just going to think things through, take my time. Of course, the Churnabogs can quest and draw. Might give me something cheap to play after. I'm not sure how much income I'm at, but if I can get to 8 and have like a 1 cost, I don't know. The Broom's a bit tricky because I can't really like draw off the Broom into B prep, right? So some interesting decisions. Beaking Undisputed with the Rabbit. I obviously held onto that Beaking earlier on. Is now looking like a reasonably good option, but I also want to make sure I don't play too heavily into Matt's B prep, right? I risked it a little bit in the previous turn and they didn't take it. So Beaking comes through. Matt, of course, gets to decide which goes and decides on the Rabbit to draw, which is interesting. I would have maybe been more tempted by the Fox, but to be fair, this does deny my Medusa. If I'm planning on going Medusa this turn, that's no longer going to be an option for myself. Similarly, I can't go Brawl this turn either. So I can see why they go for the Rabbit over the other 2. I'm at 5 cards in hand, I believe, so the Sisu is going to be removing my Maui. I need to be down at 2 cards in hand for Maui to remove Sisu. And again, something like that. I think this is actually, looking back, I'm really thinking at this moment in time that I want to go Maui into Sisu and keep my Maui. But that means that I can't draw off my Brooms. But then I think at some point I changed my mind about wanting to protect the Maui. So here I'm deciding on the Magic Broom, right? I've played the Maui. I let my opponent know. I'm wondering if I draw my Broom. At this moment in time, I'm looking for... I'm just trying to work out, like, am I getting B prepped? Right. Initially, I was like, okay, I can dump my hand. And I can actually trade my Maui, remove the Sisu, and keep Maui on the board. But then I'm losing out on card draw from Brooms, and then I get B prepped, which is going to be less cards in hand. So I kind of changed my mind halfway through the turn here, which is not ideal. I think the Maui was still fine, and I do decide to draw because I'm wanting to mitigate the value of that B prep that Matt can potentially have, which is why I decided not to dump my hand and remove Sisu while keeping Maui on the board, because it meant I would have lost out on card draw from things like the Broom and the Churnabogs. So it's now even in terms of lore, and I'm doing a pretty good job of not giving Matt particularly tempting Be Prepared. I think the Be Prepared in the previous turn was significantly more tempting than it is here, which kind of comes back to my point where I think maybe Matt was supposed to take the Be Prepared a turn sooner, but I think also in Ruby Amethyst mirrors, the player the player that Be Prepared's first puts himself at a bit of a disadvantage because then it's like a board reset and I almost get to go first, but you know, open with a castle and make things tricky. That's probably why Matt didn't go for it. Maui comes in, removes the Rabbit. Pretty scary board, but pretty tempting option to Be Prepared. I mean, I've got 2 of them. I'm going to do it at some point, surely, and I don't really hesitate, I think, here. This just seems like a Be Prepared all day, every day. I ink Brawl, and in comes one of my 2 Be Prepareds available. I don't think I've got any ink spare. That's all of it. But it's 8 apiece, and this is where Queen's Castle for Matt would be pretty scary, but that's not a Queen's Castle, that's a Rabbit. Do they have Queen's Castle available? It doesn't seem like they do. We did see them ink a Queen's Castle way back when, so that could come back to something. I think Matt's had Be Prepared in hand a lot, which has made their inking decisions a little bit more forced. Even inking Maui is a little bit dodgy because I'm pretty happy to see that, right? I'm sat there thinking, okay, Maui's been inked. Queen's Castle, if I can get it down at some point, might actually be safe. I get my Rabbit down. Of course, I can't Brawl or Medusa the Fox here. But I still have a bit of ink available. I do ink a Brawl and I go for a Goat. Get up to 9. I've got a rabbit and a goat on a board. Feeling pretty good. They can sing Be King. They're out of... Well, the goat's out of Medusa range. Of course, the rabbit's within Medusa and Brawl range. But they're both good at singing Friends. They can sing Be King. Medusa does come through. The rabbit is gonzo. But of course, I get a card in hand for my troubles. And Friends is going to be sung by the fox. Matt draws another couple of cards. I think that might have just been a third Be Prepared they've drawn. Again, I'm going to work on the camera setup to make sure you can see the hand there. 3 Be Prepareds! Uh-oh. It's not what you want if you're Matt. That's for sure. This is the problem with these Ruby Amethyst decks. Getting very greedy with the high, expensive, uninkable cards like Be Prepareds. You end up in these situations where you'd really just rather have some cards to quest. If I did have more time to test Ruby Amethyst, I would have definitely tested like the matchup into Emerald Steel without as many Be Prepareds and a lower curve. Something I'm interested in. My Maui comes through, removes a fox. I need to be careful about Be Prepared still though, right? Like I'm very aware that Be Prepared is a threat. And similarly, I'm interested maybe in trying to bounce my goat back, but I just go for Sisu, which does seem like I'm playing into Be Prepared pretty hard. But I've held on to my Queen's Castle in case the Be Prepared does come through. I can then just open with a Queen's Castle and start applying quite a bit of pressure. So I'm almost inviting the Be Prepared at this stage because I have the response with the Queen's Castle. Another example, though, of where like a 1-drop format would make a big difference, right? You Be Prepared and play a 1-drop, and then I play Castle, and you can remove it with Maui plus the 1-drop. Bunch of cards in hand for Matt. 3 of them Be Prepareds. There's a rabbit in there as well. But I am in a very good position here compared with the previous games. The player going second has struggled so far, but I'm putting up a good fight. No Be Prepared from Matt, but instead goes for a Maui. I'm a little bit surprised. Those Be Prepareds feel like they just are burning a bit of a hole in Matt's pocket, but I think he really, really doesn't want to be the player to Be Prepared first. And that's probably coming from experience of him playing this matchup a lot more than I have. Now, I think I maybe make a bit of a misplay this turn from memory. I haven't watched this game back yet, but from memory, I float ink. I play Friends from hand, which is fine. I have a bunch of ink. I don't want to play, obviously... but here, I'm pretty sure I have 6 ink. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could ink and play Medusa from hand. Obviously, it does nothing. But I'm pretty sure I decided to just float all this ink here. And I think as soon as I do it, I'm like, damn, I should have just played a Medusa. I have 2 in hand. Like, the stats on the board are pretty relevant up against something like a Queen's Castle. So I think this is a big mistake from myself. I think already at this moment in time, I'm like, wait, maybe I should have just played Medusa. So Snake and Goat up to 10. Of course, I'm kind of inviting Matt to play into my Be Prepared a little bit here. But I don't think I even got up to 11. Like, getting up to 11 would be nice so I can go Be Prepared Castle. But that is not going to be possible. Do I have the 1-drop of Dreams? Doesn't look like I do. I think I'm also wanting to hold on to the foxes and the snakes because if I find a goat, I can just turbo bounce a bunch of times. That's the logic. And in fairness, that Medusa on the board wouldn't have done that much for me anyway. So maybe the Medusa in hand is just fine at this stage. But that goat is back again. What Matt's done a good job of was bouncing that goat back, so I couldn't remove the goat. But for me, rabbit and goat on the board, like I want to get rid of this goat. I don't want Matt to just keep bouncing this goat back. Kind of have the read that they've got a bunch of Be Prepareds in hand since they never play one at this stage. Like the odds are they have at least 1, probably 2. So I just don't really hesitate that much, and I just clear the goat and the rabbit. I remember to add the law this time from the goat. It's an awkward hand though, isn't it? And I think I've skipped a couple turns of ink, whereas if I had inked previously, just on 1 extra turn, I'd be able to open with a Sisu here. But that's not a possibility, and that doesn't seem good. So I think there was definitely some inconsistencies in my play around this stage. Chernobog's is all Matt plays, which is not very threatening if your name is Specky. I just decided to Medusa it. I could have gone for a Brawl instead. But I decided to go for Medusa. Will I also go for a Sisu? That's the question. I ink a Brawl and... Oh, I know what's up. It's Queen's Castle. Okay, hello. So now I've got a character on the board and a castle on the board. which is a very good position to be in. Maui comes into castle, but fortunately that Chernobog was removed, so castle is going to be protected for now. They have a Flynn, but that's not a rush character, so my castle is still chilling. It gets me a lore. So I'm 2 lore, in fact. I'm up to 13. Of course, I can quest with Medusa, go to 14. And at this stage, I've got a really big decision to make. Do I be prepared the board? Can I remove Maui in some kind of different way? I do think there's a be prepared in there, but maybe it's a be king undisputed to the left of my hand. Like at this stage, I realized, like, okay, if I can remove my opponent's board, my castle sticks. I'm so close to victory. So I go for another Medusa, and I do make a misplay here because I think I have 4 ink available, and I have B king in hand, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I don't. I can't actually see it. From memory, I had B king in hand here, though. So Matt's got 6 cards in hand right now. I'm down at 4. Sisu, Magic Broom, and a couple other cards I can't quite make out. So obviously I can move the cards into the castle. I go for the broom for 1. I could have played the broom sooner and gone for card draw with the broom after Medusa, right? If I decided to sequence it in that way. And I go for the fox, and I like this play a lot because what I'm doing, I just say to, mind which Medusa I bounce back? Like, I don't remember which one I actually played this turn. And then I challenge the Maui. That's how I get rid of the Maui. I remember I got rid of it because now, look, I'm chilling with a broom on the board, but most importantly, with a castle on the board with just 1 willpower. 1 willpower on my castle is all I need because it's going to keep getting me lore. And yeah, that is really very good. So Medusa and Fox remove the Maui, and suddenly my castle is sticking around for a rainy day and continuing to rack up lore. I've also got my trusty broom on the board. Maleficent could never. Reminder, by the way. Maleficent could never do what this broom is doing. So I was about to misplay and play the rabbit, but no. I'm getting better. Look, I quest with the broom first, and then I rabbit. So now I can draw with the rabbit, and then after I've drawn with the rabbit, I can make the decision on whether or not I want to draw with the broom, and I find another Queen's Castle. But I think that there's possibly a misplay from myself here. I do go for the draw, but at this stage, I could slam down another castle. The punish is Maui, right? Like if they found another Maui, which I probably should have the read that they didn't have Maui the previous turn, right? They also inked at least 1 Maui already this game. One weakness of mine is I'm not very good at remembering what my opponent inks. But instead I go for the rabbit, and Reese, who's lingering behind me, was watching me here and told me after the game he reckons this was a misplay, which I don't know if I agree necessarily. I probably do. I think Reese knows better than I do with Ruby Amethyst, considering he got second in Lille with Ruby Amethyst, and it's what he plays the most, and I never play it. But I don't hate my decision. Like, I lose. If I go for the second castle, I win unless my opponent finds Maui. But here, if I do go for the second castle and they do have Maui, I'm in a really dodgy position. Whereas here, I'm not really too bothered about what they have. But I don't know. Kind of inviting to be prepared at this stage as well, right? With the double rabbit. But at least I'm drawing from it, and I've got quite a lot of bounce in hand. I think all I need is the goat, really, and I'm there. So I'm in a very good position. Despite going second in this one, I'm only 4 away. There is no Maui available for my opponent, so it definitely seems like the Queen's Castle was the better decision. So many B preps in hand as well, which, I should have that read that there's a lot of B preps in hand, and therefore I think it was better to just go for the second castle, really. Then again, my opponent also plays crabs in the deck, which I think is another reason I was probably not wanting to put the castle down. I'd seen a crab earlier on in the game. Definitely the potential of another crab coming through. It is be prepared, probably unsurprisingly. It's going to clear a bunch of rabbits, so I draw 2. My opponent draws 1. And Queen's Castle opener, and look at me, I'm a bit spooked by that. It's game on. Off the top, can I find the goat? Oh, that's not a goat. I'm just checking we're all good on the 16-13 after game 1, where I messed up. I said, are you happy with this score? He said, no, I wouldn't say I'm happy with it, but it is correct. I do have the goat available, which possibly also was a reason why I decided to make the less risky play of the double rabbit rather than the extra castle in the previous turn. Didn't really work out for me in fairness, though, did it? But I did get some extra card draw off the rabbits. I'm at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 10 ink. So what I'm wanting to do is bounce the rabbit back, but also end the turn with the rabbit in my hand so it can't be removed. And then I can just, utilize it again and do some more bouncing in the next turn. Obviously, I would quite like to get castle down as well because it's very difficult to answer castle on an open board like this. So 4 is going to be spent on goat to 17. That's not bad at all, is it? Of course, the fox can challenge into my opponent's castle as well, which can sink some damage in to help me remove it more easily if necessary. I think here a castle would be a pretty good option, but I also want to bounce this goat back into my hand. So let's see what I go for. I go for the fox. Puts me to 18. Maybe this is where Reese said I misplayed. I don't know. There was definitely a point where Reese didn't like what I did. I think it was the previous turn though, but here I'm at 4 and I go for the goat again because it puts me to 19. So obviously if the goat's removed, I win anyway, right? So I think this was absolutely fine. Castle gets them to 15. I don't think it's possible for them with goat bounce to get to 20. So I'm chilling. I think this play was fine. It was definitely the previous turn where I didn't play castle, which Reese didn't like. And yeah, they have a couple of goats, so it could have been pretty scary. But not quite enough ink available. I did a good job of mitigating the amount of lore. GG's to my opponent. I go 4-0, and the next match is up against Bucky. Make sure you subscribe to see that tomorrow. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and check out the Patreon for more bonus content, which is exclusive on Patreon. Cheers.